was going on walks, I was going to the cafe, bumping into locals, like, just living life without thinking about what's next. And 2 weeks into that, I felt this like sense of all my creativity was coming back. I put the word productivity in the category of words that are misleading, same as optimization, even to some extent like entrepreneur or business owner. A lot of these are words that we use to describe a thing, but we may each be coming from a different level of understanding. I woke up in bed Monday morning 2 weeks after, and it was honestly like a bolt of lightning had hit me, and it was just saying, the cheerleader, the cheerleader, the cheerleader.
Welcome to Out of Place, where we speak with the ones who are challenging the status quo, leading from curiosity, doing things a little differently, and above all, have felt out of place somewhere along the way.
We've got real stories, honest lessons, a few laughs, and maybe some tears about building an aligned business and life from people who've been there, are there, or just getting started. We're your hosts, Anne and Paul.
You're exactly where you need to be. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to Out of Place. Today I'm excited to introduce our guest, Wendy. Wendy is a mindset and productivity coach who works exclusively with high-performing, successful female founders who are brilliant at what they do, but behind the scenes, they're exhausted. Since founding the Cheerleader in 2023, Wendy has been on a mission to end what she calls the girl boss hustle culture era and help women build purpose-led, lifestyle-aligned businesses without burning out. She spent years in hospitality and corporate, coordinating international events, managing projects from Vue de Monde to University of Melbourne. She knows what it's like to be high-performing, productive, and completely disconnected from life. As a certified mindset coach with specialties in neurolinguistic programming, timeline therapy, and hypnotherapy, Wendy combines evidence-based coaching techniques with her MBA and extensive project management experience to help founders reclaim their sense of self. She's analytical, systems-focused, and has a natural talent for spotting solutions hiding in plain sight. She's also a self-described beach babe who grew up on the central coast of New South Wales, lived in Queensland's Sunshine Coast, and now calls Melbourne home. Welcome to the show, Wendy.
Hi, Anne. Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for having me. It is wild to hear your bio read out by someone and you're just the listener in that situation. It sounds so glamorous. I'm like, oh, yeah, I am a beach babe, just hits a bit differently when it's not you kind of relaying what your story is. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and welcome, Wendy, and thanks, Anne, for that awesome intro. I was giggling inside when your self-described beach babe came out. Maybe we'll understand that throughout the podcast, but Just to kind of get us started, something that was mentioned in the introduction was about this hustle culture and also burnout. So you've said that the burnout era is over, in your own words, and that you started the Cheerleader because the girl boss hustle culture era needs to end. What was your personal breaking point that made you realize this? And was there a specific moment where you just felt, I can't keep doing this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there were two events that happened that I think contributed to the seed of the idea of working for myself started and being able to help guide and empower other women to kind of go down that path as well. One was during my MBA, I was studying at RMIT University, which I absolutely adored. And I was very sad when the MBA ended. I actually missed the learning and the significant mental challenge that was to keep learning and growing with deadlines along the way. But there was a particular subject on leadership, and that was actually my first introduction into personality testing. And I was introduced to the Myers-Briggs personality type, I guess you can call it questionnaire. And that level of self-awareness of even just seeing yourself through a certain lens and seeing the kind of traits or characteristics that come up with the personality types. And whether or not you're a full advocate for Myers-Briggs or any other kind of testing like that, for me, it played a part in kind of snapping me out of just going along with my automatic programming of knowing how to succeed in corporate and being able to see the ladder and climb the ladder. And it kind of went, oh, wait a second, I'm an individual person and I have individual strengths, and can I explore those further? So that was the kind of first part. The second part was I believe that this is quite a common experience as I speak to other female founders who have now transitioned out of corporate into doing their own thing, is I experienced burnout in 2020. It was maybe about July 2020. And yeah, there's this vivid moment where I was doing a home workout. I was in front of the TV. I had YouTube on doing a workout, and then I just couldn't do it anymore. I'd fit that 10-minute slot into a long, long day where I'd gotten up at 4 a.m. and I was grinding and hustling and I was pushing. I had a 10-minute break, went downstairs to do the workout, and then before I knew it, I was rocking back and forth on the carpet. And I remember thinking, what is happening? This has never happened. I've always been able to push and push and push and go. And all of a sudden, I can't get up from this spot. So it was kind of those two things that coupled together. In retrospect, I can see that they were the seeds of kind of moving me towards, or should I say, away from the hustle culture. And then the girl boss thing is a little bit separate to that. But yeah, it was just that moment of rocking back and forth. And so I feel like that's quite a common experience that people went through during the lockdown times, particularly in Melbourne.
What was that? Because that could be quite a scary experience, right? Like your body's kind of giving up and saying, "Hey, I can't do this anymore," and your mind's like, "Well, what's going on? I don't know what's going on." What was that experience like personally for you? Like, did you lose, a lack of felt safety? Like, how did it, influence and impact your life at that moment?
Yeah, it was wild. I suppose for a couple of months since we had entered that first lockdown, the thoughts that were going on in my head, being a digital project manager at the time, so we're dealing with kind of the intangible, because you're thinking of systems and processes, but it's not like you're holding a pen or a drink bottle or a chair. You're really dealing with processes that exist in other people's minds, and in the business organization. Then we're developing products that are, again, intangible. And then I remember finishing the last page in a physical notebook and then looking at it and going, why do we need anything physical in the physical world? So I guess this was what occurred in my mind before I got to that point of burnout. It was a little bit of an existential crisis because, yes, we adapted to working online and what I believed was being high performing and really efficient and effective. And you don't need a notepad and pen. You don't need anything tangible. It can all just be in your mind. It can all be online. All you need is your laptop or even your phone, and you can do your whole entire job, your whole career. And so I don't know if it actually, now that I'm talking about this, was the fact that I was trying to actually do something physical with my body in that moment of doing a workout, that it threw me into a state of, wait, I've just been living in my mind and I've done nothing to ground myself. And this is me attempting that. And to your point, Paul, like the physicality of that, did that kind of trigger that a little bit, getting me out of that existential crisis? Yeah, so I guess that's what was going on for me. And to build on the self-awareness that I had started through the MBA to that moment and beyond, I've now learned, okay, check in with yourself. How are you feeling in a certain moment? And getting curious about why that might be, but without the judgment that it is.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I think something that people forget to do, especially when you're in that high performing mindset, is to actually check in with yourself and ground. So what do you do now to ensure that you're grounding yourself?
Yeah. We've actually got a mutual friend, Anne, Jacinta, who will probably laugh when I say this, because for years she has been reminding me to come back down to earth and become more grounded and lean into meditation and lean into yoga and swimming in the ocean and things like that. And so even now, I think it's a journey for me, even though I know the benefit of grounding myself actually has for me personally. So, yeah, it is those things. It is taking time to actually practice a meditation every day. And when I say that, I'm talking 5 to 10 minutes. I don't know what it is that people may think when they think of meditation, but for me, that's really helpful. And I usually gravitate between 1 or 2 meditations at a time. So I'll be doing just the same one over and over again for several weeks. And I find that that really helps me, because the repetition of that guided practice, for me personally, no longer thinking about the words that they're saying, and you're just kind of entering into that meditative state quicker, because you're used to what is coming next and used to the length of times. That really helps. And I'm a big walker. I do a lot of walking. So I'm talking 2 to 3 hours a day usually. Credit to my dog for that, because she will give me the side eye if I'm not hitting those KPIs for her. But what I've learnt about that is that that is so crucial for me. And I can really, really tell when I haven't done a walk that day, or even the length of time. And I guess there's a few benefits to that in terms of grounding. Is it's a task for me in my physical body, which I realize is important for me. It's also time outside and time in natural light. And when I compare that back to those moments before I had the burnout and during the burnout and coming out of that, a lot of my time was in, a dark, cold room staring at a screen and only existing in my mind, and not in my physical self. So definitely combining the meditation and the walking has really helped me. And it's a normal thing now, which is part of my day.
Yeah, I love how you have simplified it, because there is a lot of, stimuli out there to kind of grab our attention in this kind of health and wellness space. And just the fact that you use, I guess, repeated meditations, sometimes you alternate between two, and then that mindful movement. And obviously you have your dog holding you accountable for those KPIs, which is a really, really big benefit.
So if you look at your career and the paths that you've taken, you've shifted from more your kind of project management roles to now entrepreneurship, which can be a bit scary, a bit risky for a lot of people to undertake. So what made you take that leap, first of all? And then secondly, what has surprised you most about becoming a business owner?
Yeah, I guess thinking about it, it was a combination of things. I'd finished my study around about the same time that I had made the decision for myself that working in government was not for me in any way, shape, or form. And those two things kind of aligned. So I'd finished up that role, I'd finished my studies. There was this sense of kind of achievement, but I remember it was 2 weeks after I kind of wrapped all of that up, and I was just going about living my life. I was going on walks, I was going to the cafe, bumping into locals, just living life without thinking about what's next. And 2 weeks into that, I felt this sense of all my creativity was coming back that hadn't been there while I was in a role that wasn't suited for me and that was out of my values alignment. And I just had this rush of creativity come back, and I woke up in bed Monday morning 2 weeks after, and it was honestly like a bolt of lightning had hit me, and it was just saying, the cheerleader, the cheerleader, the cheerleader. And I didn't know what really to do with that information, but instinct told me to go over to the laptop, look it up as a business name, register an ABN, get the domain, and all of it was available, which I was shocked by. And so it wasn't necessarily an intentional choice of finishing up a role and then deciding to become a business owner or to start a business or to go on the track of entrepreneurship in any way. It was literally just like, oh, I had this idea, I'm taking action immediately, and not see an expectation on what that meant. I just did it. And I remember calling my very good friend, Rach, and I said, so I've just done this thing, kind of random. I've just, registered an ABN. I've got this idea, like the cheerleader. I guess it's a business. I've been showing up as a cheerleader in project management spheres and business spheres for a long time. I felt that I was always describing myself as that, for advocating for other people and giving them the resources so they could perform. And she just said something like, yeah, I knew it would happen. I was like, how did you know? And I didn't know. So I guess that was how it started. But for me, it wasn't necessarily an intentional or strategic or planned thing. I just allowed creativity back in, and then the idea came to me, and then I took action on it.
Something that I took from you just then was you had this moment, this aha moment or lightning bolt moment, and your immediate thing to do was to take action. You registered the domain, you set up the company, and so on. Whilst you're transitioning through that, what was it like still working in the corporate space, the more traditional space, and transitioning into your own business?
I guess at the time, it felt right. In retrospect, I see that it was really putting myself in an environment that was not aligned with my internal values. Not just the words that come to you on a day-to-day, like, oh, I don't know, I want security, or I want money, or I want this. Like, those words can kind of change day to day. But internally, those things that drive you, it was out of alignment in those corporate arenas. And then it's in alignment when I'm outside of that. So when it is more creative problem solving, there's less barriers, there's less kind of red tape, so to speak. You can move quickly, you can explore ideas. So I guess, yeah, at the time it felt off. And then when I transitioned, it felt right. But yeah, I know in myself that obviously government and corporate work are for some people, and that is aligned for them. But for me personally, it's not. And what I've come to learn about myself is that I have very high levels of self-direction. I also crave, creativity and problem solving, and just being able to have variability and control over, I'm thinking I'm going to do this, I'm thinking I'm going to try that. And then also in terms of more of a universalism when it's talking about systems and way things operate and the efficiency. And I guess that is bringing that project management experience with me on this journey, but I'm exploring it in a way that I can gear towards things I'm interested in. And I guess for me as well, I do kind of joke about this, but a really key value of mine is just the fun element, enjoyment as a value, and how the person I was showing up as every day in the corporate environment wasn't the fun version of myself that could bring some happiness and joy into the room. And now I feel that I can show up that way and have a bit of a laugh and have some banter and just have fun day to day. So yeah, definitely it feels good now, but I also know it's attached into what internally drives me. And yeah, so now I can have fun and explore, and I can have great conversations with the likes of you. And, as opportunities come up, I can be like, is this fun? Does this feel free to me? Is this creative? And so that's when I can check in with myself moving forward.
I was just gonna say, yeah, that's beautiful. It's like those, I guess, that internal compass, those boundaries you have, what feels right, what doesn't feel right, and it's pursuing the ones that feel right.
It's also bringing that fun to work and that joy to your work as well, and giving yourself permission to do that. Because I think, and we've spoken about this before in a different episode, where people often come to work with their corporate persona, and then they have their separate one, and they leave their, corporate one. As they step through that door, that kind of, your suit on, collar up kind of thing, and then off you go. And I feel like for a lot of people, that's so disconnecting for them because they have to show up as somebody different to themselves and the lack of authenticity. So being able to step away from that and bring yourself back to who you actually are and enjoying what you do, I think that's such an important thing for a lot of people. For anyone who's kind of thinking about a mindset coach and what a mindset coach does, I think for some people, they probably think that there's this kind of really analytical side to mindset coaching, helping someone connect the dots and solving problems with them. But you've talked a lot about, feeling into things, does it feel aligned? So how do you combine those two things for somebody when you work with them?
I guess my approach to coaching is about really holding the space for my client to explore and realize their own potential and realizations. So what I mean by that is it's less of a mentoring experience where I may have had a similar event happen to me or a thinking pattern happen to me in the past, and a client comes to me and I share what worked with me and I share, oh, you could think of it this way. It's less of that, and it's more just having that space and asking questions that raise the level of self-awareness in the client and holding a lot of space. And what I mean by that is having pauses to allow them to do that mental work to come up with, actually, is this blocking me? Actually, is that holding me back? Or is that just the story I've been telling myself? So I find that in having that type of dynamic in the session, I am being quite analytical with the words they're choosing to use or the patterns that are coming up. And so that satisfies me on an analytical level. However, you need to be careful as a coach to not let your own curiosity get in the way of what is best for the client in that moment. When I speak to other coaches, that's one of the things that usually comes up. And we're reminding ourselves that our clients could be fascinating people, but we are not journalists. And in that moment, we are not hosting a podcast. So there's a limit to our own interest driving questions we're asking them and really keeping it focused on their growth and their self-actualization, if you want to call it that. Yeah, so it's fascinating because, as soon as the session ends, you kind of go, oh my God, I just wish we could go back and talk about that thing at 10 minutes in because that was amazing. Or I have had that exact experience before and I wish I could just share it with them. So depending on the kind of arrangement that you have with the client, I find that in one-on-one, it's really, you need to focus on them. When I've run group coaching programs before, I feel that you can kind of have a bit of a hybrid approach in that you are facilitating a group moving through, let's say, a 12-week period. So there is more of a give and take and a discussion, and you can share what has happened for you. So that becomes a blend of coaching and mentoring or even kind of advice giving. But it's fascinating. Yeah, the conversations that aren't had are the ones you kind of keep thinking about, oh, I wish I could have asked that.
And I guess that takes a lot of self-awareness of yourself, right? When you're working with someone, to take a step back and make it, I guess, subjective about their experience, which is a very hard thing to do naturally. And it's something that you support people with finding is peace versus productivity. So a lot of productivity advice kind of tells us to optimize and do more. How do you define productivity in, I guess, your space of work? What does being productive actually mean to you?
Great question. I put the word productivity in the category of words that are misleading, same as optimization, even to some extent like entrepreneur or business owner. A lot of these are words that we use to describe a thing but we may each be coming from a different level of understanding. So I guess that's the first thing, is that the terminology itself can be misleading. And I'll just give an example. So if I say to you both, picture John standing in front of a house, what comes to mind for you, Anne? And then what comes to mind for you, Paul?
A person that I know standing in front of a house that I know of.
What came to mind to me was a person standing in front of a really big house.
Yeah. And so there is nuance in those two answers. But then what if I told you that John is a dog and he's standing in front of his doghouse?
I love John even more.
Right?
And now I'm seeing the dog with its tongue out, smiling, laughing, excited to get in his little kennel.
Exactly. So that just illustrates the point of we're saying words, productivity or, mindset. There are words there that we each have a kind of a different lens on what that actually means. So to your question, Paul, what I see productivity as is quality work in doing the thing that only uniquely you can do, and you're going in the path of what your long-term goals and aspirations are genuinely, not what you should do, but what you actually want. So that's the kind of first step to productivity, is knowing what direction you're even going in. I find that in the kind of digital world we're in, where there's optimization and AI support here, and you can automate this and automate that, that's all great. But if you don't know to what end and for what purpose, it is just busy work, it seems. And it's easy to get overwhelmed and think you're making progress when actually you're just kind of swirling around this digital landscape. And this is coming from someone that actually enjoys learning about AI and experimenting with different tools and platforms. Like, I actually enjoy that environment, but when it actually hinders progress towards your actual goal, I consider that unproductive and distracting. So I guess for me, productivity, what I try and help my clients understand and live by is it's this kind of a choice and a decision to work on a thing that is in the right direction of your goal, as opposed to thinking you need to do every single idea that you have at one time, thinking all of them are at equal priority level, because often they're not.
That's a nice little segue into the next question, actually, about, how do you prioritize things in a certain order and put focus on the right thing that needs to come next? Because one of your previous jobs was hosting at Vue de Monde and working in hospitality in general. So is there anything that you've learnt in terms of those roles that's helped you shape the way that you coach founders, or any unexpected skills that you've taken from there that you use today?
Wow, that's a fascinating question. That's going back into the archives of my mind. I mean, one thing that I've always loved and gravitated towards, again, seeing it in retrospect, I don't know that I had this level of self-awareness at that point, but is I love a system and a process. I love when you can really consciously choose what is an effective way of moving through, for example, prep before a fine dining restaurant service, or whether you're in events and the event is coming up in 3 months and what are the things you need to get done logistically before then. There's an element of thinking about what's actually required to achieve the result that at that point in hospitality and events, it's non-negotiable. So it's not like the event date can just move. If you've got a wedding with 500 people coming, that's when it's on. So there is kind of this joy that I feel when you're looking at that and then going, okay, this is the plan. And then when you can kind of replicate that plan, it becomes a template or a blueprint for you to do that same thing moving forward. And then you're just adding in learnings from each time you do it to make it more relevant for that goal. I kind of get a kick out of that. So I think, how that shows up for me now is in basically documenting the findings of things and being able to reflect on them and look at lessons from them, again, without judgment. It's not that I take records and look back and go, oh, I didn't do that. I'm sad that I didn't do that well, and that means I'm bad at this. I look back at it and go, okay, what was well? What would I change and make differently next time? And then that gets you kind of future focused again and geared towards when that opportunity comes up again, what would you do differently? Yeah. So look, I love a process and I love a checklist, but again, not for the sake of it. It needs to be linked to what the goal is.
Yeah, that sounds great. So when you're working with people, you're obviously certified in NLP, timeline therapy, which I actually would love to know what that is because I don't even know what that is, and hypnotherapy. And when you work with your clients, you work with them on a conscious level, an unconscious level, and a subconscious level. So just to begin there's two questions. What is timeline therapy? And then what do you mean by conscious, unconscious, and subconscious levels?
Right. Yeah. So I guess timeline therapy and subconscious kind of go together. It is a practice where, interestingly enough, coaching in itself is future focused and it points towards the future and what's next. Therapy in general points kind of backwards and is healing in its modality and it looks backwards. So it's kind of fascinating with timeline therapy because it is often, not always, but a coach that is facilitating this, but it goes back for the purpose of moving forward. So essentially you set up a safe environment to work with your client and you essentially take them through a meditative kind of script that gets them into a hypnotic state. And then they're actually going back in their mind. And the purpose of it is to remove what we call negative emotions. These negative emotions, which are anger, fear, hurt, sadness, and guilt, specifically in that order, as the coach, you facilitate them going back in this hypnotic state and kind of landing on a moment in time where they experience that emotion for the first time. So usually it's, in the imprint period between like 0 and 7 years old, as an example. So whether you are truly remembering that moment or it's whatever is coming up for you at that level of subconsciousness, you go with it. And it essentially removes that negative emotion from your gestalt, which is kind of the timeline in which we remember things. And then it kind of heals every limiting decision and limiting belief that stemmed from that first experience of fear or anger, as an example. So I'll give you an example of what happened to me when I went through timeline therapy, when a coach did this to me, is that when we went back and removed fear, what came up for me is sitting in the backseat of a car, maybe being like 2 years old or something, and just hearing a lot of noises and things moving around me and having this overwhelming sense of fear. And through the process of timeline therapy, it was removed. That kind of memory or idea was removed. And then every time since then that I've experienced fear on a road or in a car was then removed. And I vividly remember the outcome of this because I came downstairs out of my apartment, went out, I was on my bike and I went to turn on the road and a car zoomed past me on the wrong side of the road. Now, that would have sent me off the edge in the past. That would have been very confronting for me and I would have felt that in my body. I would have gone into a fear response, but kind of nothing happened. The car went past and it was fine. And I just went on with my day and I could not believe it that just removing that from the subconscious mind showed up so viscerally in my life that same day, like in the real world. It was wild. All of that is to kind of paint the picture of whether it's a memory that you're extracting out of the client or it's just whatever's coming up for them. it serves the same purpose of removing that negative emotion and then as a consequence, knocking over the limiting decision and beliefs from that point on. And I will mention that timeline therapy, it's content free. So as a coach, I don't actually hear what comes up for the client. They're in their own minds. They're in a like hypnotic state. So I'm just guiding them through that.
That all sounds super fascinating, and something that you mentioned that is in kind of my line of work as well is we have our mindset, but sometimes these stored memories are somatically, right? They're actually in our body through sensations. So is that something you experience as well with, the people you work with, that they can actually attach a thought or a story to certain sensations within their body?
That's a great question. I'm just reflecting on that because, as I say, most of how I work with clients as a coach is future focused. So timeline therapy is one kind of exception in a way because you are going backwards to then come forwards. So I guess how I most often use kind of kinesthetic or feeling based sensations with clients is when I take them through a visualization practice and kind of that mental rehearsal of the future them and asking questions to them to kind of put them in a place where, okay, well, if you already had the thing, if you already had achieved that goal, what would it feel like? What would it sound like? What would you be saying to yourself? What would you be saying to others? Like, are there sounds around you? And kind of going into those different avenues of sensory experience and having them almost feel that in their body now before they've achieved the goal. So they're actually showing up as that future version of themselves as they're working on the goal. So they're actually experiencing kind of the delight of achieving that goal now, today. So that's more how it will show up in my usual sessions.
Yeah. And the way my mind just immediately framed what you just said was kind of like embodying manifestation. So instead of talking about it, you're actually embodying the sensation of it. So you're manifesting it through sensation. So you know what it feels like when you do experience it. And you put that frequency out into
Yeah,
the world, right? To attract it.
exactly right. And so I actually kind of put manifestation in that bucket of terms where everyone has their own interpretation of what that actually means. But yeah, when we're thinking essentially down to it, what is cool about visualizing that future you and kind of challenging yourself to come up with, well, what would I be saying? What would I be feeling? And can I just show up as that person now? Again, this is probably just showing what I'm interested in, but that is fun to me. That's a fun mental challenge to have. And there's something really profound about, ending a coaching session and the client walking out their front door, walking down the street, and they're standing a bit taller. They're like, yeah, like I'm feeling that level of success. I'm feeling that, that my goal is possible. And then that permeates into the conversations you end up having, the people you smile at on the street. Like, just makes your day fun and joyful, and you feel powerful in that moment as well. So yeah, definitely, I guess you can say that's manifesting because you're really setting an intention and showing up that way. Or you can just say you want to feel good that day.
Speaking of sensory and things that bring you joy and happiness, one thing that you have said is sunshine, sand, and water are very important to you. So, how does your connection to the beach, the outdoors, influence your philosophy about work and life?
Yeah. Well, luckily, I'm up in Noosa Heads right now for the whole month. And that has really allowed me to kind of experience other beaches and waterways and outdoor spots than are my normal situation in Melbourne. So I think that variability is satisfying to me as well, and it's quite joyful and new. But yeah, I guess like when I think about my life, I've always been really close to a beach. And so I kind of say, yeah, I'm a beach babe. But again, it's not that I was ever really into surfing or surf lifesaving or anything like that. It was just something about being near water, being at a beach and seeing the sand, seeing the color of the water, seeing the color of the sky and how they come together and just the kind of feeling of the sea breeze and the sounds of the ocean, just the whole thing, to me feels really peaceful. And when I'm having a day where I'm feeling a bit of stress or a bit of overwhelm or something, I know that if I can get to a beach, even for 5 minutes, it will change my mood. So I use that as a bit of a soothing activity when I'm getting into that kind of overwhelmed state, or like there's just too many creative ideas going on and I need to just calm down a little bit. I can get overwhelmed by good things. So yeah, that's always been really helpful to me. And I just think the beauty that exists at a beach and in nature is fascinating. And when you take the time to be out on a walk or just sit outside and you notice the plants or the flowers or the birds or the sound of the wind, it's actually really relaxing. And I don't know that enough people get to experience that every single day. It seems like it's deprioritized, that it's not important enough, but it really is. And again, to the creativity and enjoyment part, that's where I find a lot of problems can be solved in my mind while you're not actively thinking about it, while you're thinking about something else. It's the whole kind of brilliant idea in the shower concept. You're in a state of relaxation and you're not dwelling on the problem, and therefore the solution will come. So why not do that at the beach?
Yeah. And I think like maybe there's obviously it's nature, and maybe there's something through our evolution there as well, like being around the water. I know for me, like when I go to the beach, it's the water that calms me. I don't even need to get in the water. Just being by the water, being by that color blue seems to really regulate my system. And we were watching a show the other day where they were talking about, it was in Costa Rica, where they actually have a therapy called tree therapy, which I'd never heard of before, right? But it's about connecting with trees. And there's no talking or anything like that in this situation. It's about feeling that connection with nature, in this case, trees. So just as we kind of move towards the end of this podcast, something for, I guess, any listeners to take away, especially if they are founders who are experiencing burnout, or there's someone who's just naturally high performing, they're doubting themselves. And often when we doubt ourselves, we forget that feeling of needing to just push through. What would you tell someone who's going through that experience at the moment? Or how would you equip someone to go through that experience in the future?
I guess what comes to mind is just allowing yourself to be curious about what you actually are thinking and feeling in that moment as step one. Just step into curiosity about it, again, free from judgment. It's not looking at yourself and going, I'm feeling stressed and I shouldn't feel stressed, and so therefore I'm a bad person. It is, I'm stressed right now. I wonder gently what is contributing to this stress. And as part of that, if you're unearthing, oh, wait a second, I'm just not showing up as how I want to show up every day, or this piece of work actually really drains me somehow. And maybe that's because I'm not actually using my strengths and my passions. And so I guess, yeah, it's just allowing yourself to be curious in a gentle way about checking in with yourself in that moment, like what's going on. And yeah, I mean, I think if you want to be changing that situation, that's when you can explore things a little bit further. Once you know what's coming up for you, I mean, yes, you could journal it out, you could talk to a friend. Of course, you could see a mindset coach and see how they may be able to help you, or even a mentor that you possibly have. So there's conversations that you can have once you've been curious that may help you see a path that in your overwhelm and stressful state wasn't clear to you initially.
Yeah, so this is just for my benefit. What I'm kind of hearing is almost take a step back, try and create some space from whatever the overwhelm is to gain some clarity on it. You don't always need to keep pushing through. You can actually just slow down. It's not about the high performance or the burnout and, that constantly going that we're used to. So just lastly, Wendy, if someone is building a business, what is your advice to them to build something that they're obsessed with instead of one that's draining them?
Yeah, I mean, big question. This is where I'll offer more of a mentoring stance than a coaching one. For me, when I reflect over my time since I've started the business, every time I've made a decision that felt, oh, I have to do that, like it is a hell yeah. I don't even care how it's going to happen. I just know it needs to happen because I want it to, and I'm driven and I'm excited by that. I've never ever regretted it. And as soon as I go into, oh, but it needs to be this way, and this is why it can't work, or this is why it can work, and this is the exact list of things that need to happen for this to be the perfect situation to explore that item, you lose motivation quite quickly, and it's not appealing anymore. So I would say, yeah, if you're starting out, focus less on what you think business is and actually just explore opportunities as they come, because testing and learning and then developing from that is going to get you in a path where you're actually helping people with what they need help with, not what you think they need help with. Back to our friend puppy John in front of his doghouse. You have an idea of what that is, but until you ask other people what they're actually thinking and what would benefit them, you are in a sense limited to how much your unique value can enter the chat.
Well, Wendy, thank you so much for your time today. We've loved the conversation, learning more about your journey, but also your key insights for somebody who's starting their own business, or even just kind of, facing their own burnout, like what they should be doing, how they should ground, but also do that self-reflection as well. However, if you are looking to connect with Wendy, or you need a cheerleader in your corner, you can find her at thecheerleader.com.au or on Instagram at Wendy_thecheerleader, where she shares her own realizations and helps you stay accountable as well.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you on today, Wendy. Really, really enjoyed the conversation.
Yes, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Anne. This has been a great conversation. Such a fan of the pod, so really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for listening to Out of Place. If something in today's episode resonated with you, let us know, or share it with someone who might need it too.
Or leave us a review on Apple, a rating on Spotify, a like or comment on YouTube, because it matters more than you know. To learn more or connect with us, head to Instagram and look up Out of Place, spelt PLAECE.
We're so grateful to be building this alongside you. Here's to finding your own way, even when you feel a little bit out of place. We'll see you in the next episode.